My guest this week is the internationally renowned DJ, producer, sound designer and label owner, Alex from Tokyo. I'd like to start with what might seem kind of an obvious question, but I'd love to know why you thought putting Tokyo in your artist name, why you chose to be Alex from Tokyo. What is it about that city that you thought needed to be in your performer name?
Yes, that's the start of everything. Yeah, I grew up in Tokyo, and I spent like 25 years in Tokyo. So since an early age, everybody outside Japan was calling me in France Alex de Tokyo, and then Alex from Tokyo. So yes, over the years, this name kind of like became my nickname somehow.
Okay, so yes, it was chosen for you rather than you choosing it yourself.
Exactly, and so after all those years in Japan, especially growing up in Japan, as a teenager too, it completely forged my identity. So it's not only a geographical reference, but it's kind of my Japanese name somehow, because a lot of people who knows me, they will say that I'm kind of like half Japanese somehow.
Okay.
Yes.
When you were in Japan, I know that you were really involved and obsessed by the club culture there. Sort of late 80s to mid 90s, that sort of spell was like hugely influential to you. Can you tell me what you think made it so special?
I mean, I was 14 years old, when I started to go out and to discover the Tokyo underground club and music scenes. So of course, as a teenager, everything is fresh and exciting. So I was in the middle of this huge megalopolis. During the kind of the end of the bubble era in Japan. It was kind of like the golden years. In Japan. And economically too, and I mean everything. Everything was there. Tokyo was like a big playground, for children, but for adults too, and definitely music, played a very big part of that, and from very early on, due to the connections between Tokyo and the US, the UK, especially New York, London, you had a strong music connections, and you had lots of little, I guess, bars, and then some of those bars, became like underground clubs. So it was a very exciting time, like everywhere else in the world. Especially like in New York, like in London, you already had some DJs, some artists from those places, coming to Japan to perform, to DJ. This is before the whole kind of like DJ kind of like a culture system as well, So I happen to be there, to be surrounded by great friends and people, at school, in international schools, and Japanese friends, buying music, going out, and I kind of like digged deep into the scene, and that's the beginning of my story with dance music in Japan.
Yeah, it sounds so exciting, that sort of time when you can feel like when something's on the up, to actually be around something where you can feel the scene growing and see the excitement building around it must have been amazing.
Yeah, for sure, and and at the same time too. It's, this is all happening live, and this is kind of like, especially in Japan, it's a different culture too as well, and of course you've had like I would say kind of like small, like underground movements. It's not, the same scale as, as in the UK, for example. So you don't really know what's going on, and then you start reading in magazines what's going on, and you get all these records from all around the world, in the record stores, in Tokyo, in Japan, and you discover that this is a big movement that is going on worldwide, and it's super exciting for sure.
So what about the actual sounds you were hearing then? What was the popular music? What was the genre you were most interested in? Any particular artists that you were really impressed by around that time?
All the latest trends, from New York, from London, and the rest of the world, were coming, and they were being transmitted, like live. You had like amazing record stores, so yeah. It was a total, I would say, kind of like crossroads of all these new music that were being made, and that were being like distributed. So of course, hip hop was really big for sure. Before I got into I would say dance music, electronic underground dance music. Hip hop was really big. I had a great friend. He went to a DJ school as well with one of the top Japanese hip hop DJ too. And so and every Sunday too, inside this big park, Yoyogi Park, you had like a kind of like a pedestrian area where you had musicians, dancers, you had all sorts of like really exciting kind of like street activities going on. And so already you had lots of like break dancers, like Wild Style, did a tour in Japan, when it came out too. So I kind of like see all of that happening. So that hip hop energy was super kind of like fresh for sure. But then I was watching a lot of TV. This is maybe how I learned Japanese as well. Just by watching TV, reading magazines, manga, and playing with the kids. Playing the kids in my neighborhood, playing baseball, practicing judo, kendo. So yeah, I was completely, I guess, in
just immersed in the culture.
Exactly, immersed in the culture. So on TV, you had for sure, lots of music programs too, but listening to a lot of Japanese music, of course, that all the J-pop, from the 80s. I grew up with all of that. My dad was and still is a big music enthusiastic. He's more of a kind of like a blues kind of like specialist. He loves like Delta blues, but he really likes all sorts of music. Basically all the hits, coming from the UK, from the US, mixed with the Japanese local scenes. That's what I was brought up with. And then of course once I started going into deeper to clubs, and I definitely got into more specific alternative underground sounds, but yeah, in the clubs, in Tokyo, back then, before house music kind of like arrived, you wouldn't really call clubs, you would call it in Japan like discos, and they were playing, all the hits. They were like great places where you could hear, like rare groove. Lots of definitely rare groove was really big. So and jazz for sure. So you had a real I would say like black music tradition, and also being French European. I went to a French Japanese school, so you had kids from all around the world. So I was always kind of like in the middle of of this big melting pot, and so yeah, I would come back to France, like once or once a year or once every 2 years, for the holiday. So for the summers, I would discover all the European summer hits as well. So yeah. I mean all sorts of stuff, and yeah. But hip hop for sure, I would say, as a young kind of like a kid, teenager, hip hop was huge, yeah, for sure, and maybe a little bit of, kind of like the kind of like a new wave also sound, like Depeche Mode, like New Order, also that kind of music, but yeah, all the big Japanese all the big Japanese artists like Saijo Hideki, like Yamashita Tatsuro, of course, yeah, like Matsuda Seiko, like Sazan All Stars. I mean, it can go on and on.
In England around that time, and in America, when those genres are coming in, like house and sort of later like rave and that kind of thing, something that was obviously a huge part of the club culture around music like that was people taking drugs, which in Japan is a much more serious crime. You're getting a prison sentence for possession and things like that.
Yes,
so
definitely.
I'd love to hear what effect you think that had on the club culture there. If there's no drugs involved, what was the atmosphere? How was that different?
Of course, in the very small, creative, circles, you had drugs, that's part of how those creative, scenes, function somehow, but for sure, generally speaking, for me, growing up as a teenager, first of all, drugs were very expensive and very hard to find, also. And so, when you are, when you are a child, a teenager, for me, there was no way, to risk anything. You from Japan, you get deported for life. It's as simple as that. If you get caught up, even back then, even with a tiny little bit of anything, So it's a very strict conservative society for sure. Yeah. So so that's one point, and yeah, and for me, I the little pocket money I had, I was buying records, also too, and but for sure, when this new music club scene started in Japan, it was in a very kind of like exclusive environment. It's like tiny little clubs for like creative people, who would be traveling regularly to New York, to London, and they were bringing back records, the fashion, art, so for that, in terms of how the scene was organized, and it was completely different from the UK, for example. There was no rave scene, at that time. It didn't. It's a different society. It doesn't work the same way as in England, for example. You didn't take drugs. You were just like enjoying yourself. Japanese people also drink a lot too. And it's different drugs also in Japan. Until the late 90s. Mushrooms were still legal in Japan. So it's a completely different, I would say, different landscape. The great thing also about how the scene, I think, developed in Japan is, even in clubs, you didn't have like security people back then. It was very safe. People will not ask for your ID. People, are very respectful, well behaved. It was kind of like in people were kind of like, celebrating those times, discovering all those new sounds, those new vibrations, like it was pretty pure as well, and in a natural high way, and that's what I always loved, in Japan. It's well organized, and people, and it's stayed a little bit like this, in a way where it's, I wouldn't say it's very exclusive, because you have bigger events now, festivals, but still, it's not popular culture. The house music, techno music, club music. It's still seen in Japan. It's a pretty kind of like exclusive kind of I guess kind of scene. So the people who are there, they are doing it, I think, with passion, for the right reason, in a great way, it's, so this is one point, I have to say, this is great in Japan, it's people, are there, for the love of the music as well, and for the right reason, you hardly ever see, in those music clubs, like people fighting, you don't see that, it's you see that in other places.
I think once everything else is taken away and the music is left as the priority, I think that's going to create a different atmosphere altogether, and it sounds like it was a great one. I've heard about, in Japan, you've got the sort of record cafes and stuff like that.
Yes.
Where you go in and there's a record playing and that's the entertainment. Is that something that you ever got involved with? Or, because I know that's still quite popular now.
I mean, you have different types also, of these. They have different names because, according to, you have more kind of like I would say the traditional kind of like jazz kind of like cafes, which are called, like jazz kissa in Japan, kind of like proper, kind of like, listening bars, the staff, playing, records, and, and you go there, to have a coffee, but also, to enjoy the music. And then you have, all sorts of different ones. I mean, I would say, in the past few years, the latest trends have been, you call them in Japan, you call them like DJ bars or music bars, So basically, it's a tiny little club, where you have a DJ booth and you have a bar counter, These are very very specific to I would say to Japan the past few years. I mean, some places can be very strict where it's like you're not allowed to talk. It's like you're there for the music, to drink your coffee, and you don't talk. People live in such small apartments. You never invite people to your house. Like home parties don't really exist in Japan. So people outside their work, they like to to meet up their friends, pubs, in bars, and it's the same with with those music bars.
Late last year, you released a compilation called Japan Vibrations Volume 1.
Yes.
Which is a collection of some of your favourite songs that came out in that mid-80s to mid-90s period.
Totally.
Some of your favourite stuff. And you released with it some photos that come with the vinyl version, comes with a photo book of photos taken around that time. And it's a real, the word you've used to describe it is a love letter to that period.
Totally.
Yeah, so could you tell me a little bit about why you chose the songs that are on it? What was the sort of theme, and how did you put those songs together?
I mean, I've been involved with a few projects, compilations with Japan, and the past few years, I've been really thinking about doing a project, a music kind of like compilation series around Japan, and so finally I was able to put it together and to start this first volume, and the starting point is kind of like my debut in the beginnings, where it all started for me in Tokyo in the late 80s to the mid 90s. So I really wanted to start this series with this era. Like I said earlier, you had all these different sounds coming up from from Japanese producers, labels, musicians, DJs, and I really wanted to represent as much as possible the diversity of the music. So first, because it's the very first volume, so I wanted to pay respect to kind of like my music heroes, which are Sakamoto Ryuichi, Hosono Haruomi, and Shimizu Yasuaki. I mean, these three legends, influenced me a lot when I started to get into music seriously. So I really wanted to pay respect to them in this first volume, and then around that, it's the beginning of house music, of techno music, of kind of like trip hop music. It's a kind of like a very exciting era with all these new sounds. So yeah, I really wanted to showcase as much as possible.
I don't know a huge amount of Japanese music, but I do know Harumi Hosono and Ryuichi Sakamoto and, obviously the Yellow Magic Orchestra stuff.
Yes.
And I was just kind of interested if you could tell me how famous and influential they are in Japan, because the fact that they made it over here and have, obviously they work with Bowie and sort of they've got like an international following.
Yes.
What was their sort of scale like actually in Japan?
They became pop stars, I mean, by the time I was a teenager, YMO stopped already. They finished working together, as YMO, but still, they were huge, everywhere. They had their own radio shows too, and I mean they were like the craft work of Japan, but they were representing this new kind of like futuristic Japan, somehow. And Harumi Hosono was already a very respected and important musician and producer and artist in Japan, whereas Sakamoto Ryuichi and Yukihiro Takahashi was playing mostly drums for this other quite cult Japanese band called the Sadistic Mika Band. Mm-hmm. So, and becomes also Sadistics as well. But yeah, so, and Sakamoto Ryuichi, he was kind of like an art music student, and he was doing lots of like studio sessions too. And so, I mean, definitely with YMO, their profile really exploded. And yeah.
Alex, what would you like to offer up as your Who's Flying the Plane hidden gem?
It's not music, but it's related to music. It's an audio project. I've been involved with my music partner Isao Kumano in Japan, with who I do this project called Tokyo Black Star, and we started an audio brand called Phonon in Japan. So it's mostly headphones for music lovers, studio engineers, bedroom producers, DJs, and it's 100% made in Japan. It's a small, I guess, a company. We set up in 2010, and it's a small quantity, made in Japan quality, and yeah, I hope that people will know more about us.
What's next for Alex from Tokyo? And have you got any plans to come and tour the UK as a DJ? Because I'd love to come and see you play.
Yes, I mean, I would love to. I moved to back to Paris a year and a half ago. Before Paris, I was in Berlin, and before that, I was in New York, and before in Japan. So I mean, it's kind of a new adventure for me. Last year, I was busy with Japan Vibrations Volume 1. I'm working on Volume 2. yes. So it's very exciting to be, you know, to be able to be working on this new volume. I'm working on some original music too as well. So hopefully, you know, combining, you know, all of these different projects, you know, I'll be able to, you know, to do some gigs in the UK. I mean, I always had a great connection, you know, with the UK. You know, when I was actually living in Tokyo in the 90s, I worked at a record store originally from London. I think now they are based in Brighton, called Mr. Bongo. So in '95 they opened up a Tokyo branch, Mr. Bongo, and so, you know, so at the record store, I mean, I was one of the buyers at the store, and yeah, we would get every week, you know, all these new exciting records, white labels, you know, like dub plates from the UK, and you know, and we were one of the first stores in Japan, you know, to sell, you know, all these new sounds to all the DJs in Japan too, you know. So yeah, so this connection for me has always been very special, and there are some really amazing, deep, you know, music spots all across the UK. So yeah, so if somebody's interested in having me, you know, don't hesitate to contact me. I've never been to Bristol. I would love to go to Bristol.
Yeah, well, hopefully it will happen. I think the crowd in Strange Brew would love to.
Yeah, of course.
Hear.
Yeah.
So yeah. Thanks a lot for talking to me today, Alex. It's,
I mean,
I enjoyed hearing about your projects.
No, of course. I mean, thank you so much for the invitation and for the support, and I'm happy that we were able to organize this interview.